Hey, you guys, it's David at Bali and Beyond and Project Awakening. And I'm here with my buddy, Dr. Bob Dickson. And Bob's all about awakening people. And in many ways, say hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob. Oh, hi, David.
and Bob and I go back, I don't know, 20, 25 years?
20 years.
20 years. And in the time that I've known Bob Dickson, he has always been deeply involved in community causes, you know, in whether it's in Guatemala. He and I actually got to work on a project down there. We never actually ended up there together.
No.
But I introduced him to Annie, and in what's the name of the town?
Alvaro
Mate. And I was there years ago with Kenny McNeil
and Daryl.
Yeah. And we had such a great time. And Bob's, how many times have you been there?
Probably about 7 times, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I could go down more often and be a doctor in the clinic that we still supply the drugs for, or some of the drugs, but at some point they have to take off on their own, and Ann Lossing's done a good job of that.
Ann and I were friends for since the 80s.
Yeah.
And Ann Lossing went down there years ago and got in this community. And at the time, Guatemala had just got out of civil war, really. Mm-hmm. And she's made such a huge difference. And Bob has gone and probably taken a lot of people with you, haven't you? Mm-hmm. And people that have continued to make a difference. And you would come back and make sure that everybody who had any money in this town was giving it to that thing. So a lot of of Alberta's support has gone into that project. And they've had a clinic, and she's done such a great job of helping the local women get engaged in businesses and the school.
We built them a women's center.
Yeah.
And that's gone really well, because there's 5 women's groups down there at last count. And they've done really well in the new women's center we built for them. Well, new, it's 12 years old now. But it has a kitchen on it, so they can do some catering for people that come in. And little daycare, and now they have an organic garden around the clinic, around the women's center. So they've done really well. Mm-hmm. And maybe we should just talk about that a little more, because there's a couple more developments that are really new, and you might not even know about them.
No, go ahead, please.
So we also built the computer center library that was just across the compound from the medical center.
Yes, yeah.
And so the dentists from Calgary, the Dentistry for All group, headed by Dr. Brad Krusky,
yes.
They would go down every year for about 8 or 10 days and take over the computer center library, and have their dental chairs, their compressors, bring everything with them. Mm-hmm. Huge task, very expensive to do so. So we always talked with Brad about building a dental clinic, a permanent dental clinic down there, instead of just coming once a year. Even that once a year has made a huge difference in the kids' and the adults' teeth down there as well. But anyway, we tried to buy some land and maybe expand a little bit and build a building, and that didn't come through. And so last year, Brad made them an offer. Dentistry for All made Ann and Project Ishkanan an offer. So they bought the computer center library from us to have a permanent dental office.
Wow.
And so they have all the equipment and supplies right there. So dentists can now come out from Guatemala City and from the towns around the lake, Santa Elena, around the other side of the lake. And
Flores?
And Flores and Santa Elena are right side by side there.
Yep.
And so they'll be able to dentists come a lot more regularly. And then the young fellow that they've hired also to work there permanently from El Ramate, he can work out of that clinic and teach the kids and do some education and such, hand out toothbrushes and toothpaste. So anyway, with the money that Dentistry for All gave Project Ishkanan, they bought the house that's across the street from Ann. And it's a big old house that needed a lot of work, but a big property, and Ann has just done an amazing job transforming that. So now they have this wonderful child education center, computer center, library, all in this big house with murals on the walls, and they've just built a sports field in the back, and it's just, I haven't seen it yet personally, but seen lots of pictures, and it looks absolutely beautiful. And I guess they're really bringing the kids in and the adults too for ongoing education. So great development.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, that Ann had just, has really committed her life to that the last 20 years.
Absolutely.
And made a huge difference. And we go back, I'll never forget how, a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
She was living in a little townhouse over in the southwest, and we just became good friends, also from New Brunswick.
Mm-hmm.
Fun. Well, good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of stuff.
So that's gone really well. So I don't have to go down very often. Although Dr. Chapeton retired about 3 or more years ago. So
her guy.
Yes, her
What's
husband.
his first name?
Enrique.
Enrique, yes, yeah.
Chapeton.
Yeah.
And so he's retired. So we don't have a permanent doctor down there. So if you know any docs that want to go down, or nurse practitioners, I sent a few nurse practitioners down, and they love it down there because they get to run the show,
Mm-hmm.
along with the nursing student who is still working there and running the clinic. Marvin, little
Mm-hmm.
Marvin is running the clinic most of the time. But when a doctor drops in from Europe or North
Mm-hmm.
America, they'll help out or take over. And but then Marvin has to run it when there's no doc
Mm-hmm.
around. So the nurse practitioners get to run it along with Marvin, and they really enjoy that.
So we'll put her link on this one. I mean, it's not what we get together today to talk about, but
Yeah.
a big shout out to Anne at Project, in how do you say it?
Ishkanan.
Ishkanan.
And it's very simple. It's just ishkanan.com. So that's IXCANAAN.com. Ishkanan.
Oh, cool. Well,
Yeah.
we'll link it anyway.
Yeah, good idea.
Maybe Annie will put this.
And can always use some funding too. You know, it costs about $900 US to run that entire system there. The medical clinic, the computer center library, and kids development center, and the women's center.
A month.
A month, $900 a month.
Wow.
US.
She's still working over in the hotel?
Yeah, she still manages the hotel part-time. Yeah.
That's how she lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through
What a great gal.
through Eduardo Cofino, the
He's been-
hotel owner from Guatemala City.
Benefactor, hasn't he?
Yeah, big benefactor for decades. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. So that's that's an aside. But you've been involved with all kinds of things. You know, with those folks that go to Ukraine.
Well, Medical Mercy Canada, I've volunteered with them in the past, and still do a little bit, but not as much.
I hear Karen's left.
Karen Cuthbertson,
Yes. She's
left
gone.
completely.
I
She's
think so.
she retired as the manager or executive director or whatever, I think.
Well, maybe she's still involved, but she got something else going on. It's really cool. She's an amazing.
Yeah, very
done
interesting.
So much great work in Nepal.
Mm-hmm.
And have you been to Nepal?
Yes. Went over with Trevor Ironside. You know Trevor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who's now, or he was the president. He just retired last month as the president of Medical Mercy Canada.
Yes.
And so I went with him, and I showed him some of the Medical Mercy Canada projects in Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went up to Nepal, and he showed me the school that he's built there. And that's another fantastic project. Trevor has done so much good work there.
Mm-hmm.
This school is just stunningly beautiful. He's had some criticism of it being a Cadillac, when you need maybe a Volkswagen, but the girls in Lumbini, which is the birthplace of the Buddha, where his school is located, they didn't have anything. And these girls are so empowered now. They're coming through this school with flying colors, and they're coming out as nurses and teachers and such. And it's just
And
great
how
work.
did it weather the earthquake?
They had no earthquake down there at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought all of Nepal was in that shade.
No, they're far down south. They're just across from Indian
Indian
actually,
border, yeah.
near the Indian border. So didn't have much down there at all, as I understand. But no, they're pretty isolated there. So
Yeah.
funding down there and access is a bit more difficult.
Did you ever meet my friend Kira, who I introduced to Karen, and she's has an orphanage that she runs in Nepal. And she doesn't run it, but she's the main benefactor, of this orphanage, and I put them together, and they've.
I don't think so.
Well, there's lots of work to do in Nepal, isn't there?
Oh, tons, yeah. Beautiful people, very poor country, lots of poverty. Yeah, lots of work there. But they've been putting constrictions on volunteers and on people going in that it's going to make it tougher for volunteers to go in and help out. So that's kind of sad.
Isn't it? Yeah. There's a funny government sometimes. I don't want to say too much about that, but yes.
Yeah.
And they're in a tight
Politics.
spot because China wants them,
And
India wants them.
They squeeze them from both
and,
sides.
they're in a very tight spot. No
Yeah.
pun intended, but they really are.
Yeah.
In their politics are, they're dancing, probably singing two tunes at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah,
It's
no question. It's a hard spot.
Well, good for you. You've done what other countries have you done work in?
Well, most of my work has been done from here. I find I can be more effective from here rather than going overseas. Like to go down to Guatemala and put on Band-Aids and hand out pills is not an effective use of my time. I can provide some medications and supplies and equipment and build some things for them.
Yeah.
But to go down there a lot, they should be doing a lot of that on their own. Give them a hand up and let them go with it. So Results Canada has been a big one. I don't volunteer so much anymore with Results. Still do occasionally.
Yeah, I've been to some of their fundraisers.
Yeah, we've had some huge successes with Results over the years. We helped to bring Results from the mid-1990s out of the proverbial closet and to be a force to be reckoned with in Canada. At one point we were the third most effective lobby group in Canada, and we're the tiniest by far, like as far as funding.
Results is an acronym for?
Responsibility for Ending Starvation Using Legislation, Trim Tabbing, and Support.
Wow.
So trim tabbing is an interesting one. Are you familiar with Buckminster Fuller's work at all?
Well, yes, but maybe not in that area. I mean, I'm familiar with his architectural work. And
architecture, inventing. He was an incredibly scientific mind, but also a philosopher and a philanthropist. And, and he wrote several books. And
he built some stuff in Ubud.
Yeah?
In Bali. He built...
oh, man.
Yeah, he had
I didn't know that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing guy. Passed away obviously a decade or two ago, but he used to use the analogy of trim tabbing. And that's, if you look at the huge ship of state that's probably not very stable in most countries these days, floundering out on a stormy sea, so this huge ship, it's hard to change direction in that ship. But that ship has a big rudder on the back that you can turn, but that big rudder is pretty big and heavy and hard to turn too. But on that rudder there's a little trim tab, and you can turn that little trim tab real easily, and then that turns the rudder, then that turns the ship of state off in a more stable, productive direction. So that's his analogy of trim tabbing, and that's what the T in Results stands for, is trim tabbing. So we used to trim tab government policy. And our tiny little group was so effective at trim tabbing policy that with Stephen Harper in 2010, when we had the G8 and the G20 in Toronto, we actually convinced him to be an advocate for the poor, especially the poorest women in the world, and women and children. And we asked for $1 billion of Canadian funding out of that for the poorest women and children, and they actually gave us $1.1 billion, and that morphed into another $7 billion from the other G7 countries, and then a couple of years later another $3.4 billion. So hugely successful, and that was really a large part to do with our initiative.
So these were government commitments
to the poorest in the world, to programs for the poorest.
So it didn't come to you guys?
No, not a cent of it came to us.
Yeah.
And we never asked for money for us.
No.
It's always for good programs, reproducible, monitorable, trackable programs that are actually doing some good in the world.
Yes, wow.
Yeah, so that was big wins there.
Yeah, you've written a lot of letters.
Probably 600 or 700 published at this point, between letters and op-eds and editorial pieces and opinion pieces and magazine articles. And
So this, what we're going to talk about today, is you've been involved in really in the education around fluoride
and policy making.
And policy making, and because I mean you're a medical doctor, and I'm sure that you've studied this
just for 20 years.
Only for 20 years.
Yes, yeah. I actually voted for water fluoridation in our last plebiscite in Calgary. You probably didn't know that.
You voted for it?
For water fluoridation in 1998, and friends came to me afterwards and said, "Oh, why did you vote for water fluoridation?" I said, "Well, as a family doctor, I have hundreds of things come across my desk every week, and I can't research every single one. So in this particular case, I looked at the literature that came out from Alberta Health Services and the Calgary Health Region at the time, and it was very glossy and glitzy and sounded and looked good, and I went, well, this is something I can vote for, and so I did. And they challenged me to look at the literature myself, which I did, and I was just abhorred by what I found. Just aghast. And how could we be doing something like this? And just as an example, 14 medical winners of the Nobel Prize, Nobel laureates in medicine, several of them have called, they come out against water fluoridation, but several of them have called water fluoridation not one of, but the biggest scam ever propagated against society.
Wow.
The biggest scam.
Yeah. Do you know the names of these Nobel laureates that they did health? I mean, you don't have to say now, but you could actually.
Yep. We have a list of 14 of them.
Wow, we could put like we're going to do this, and then we'll do quite a page of links of information, and that people want to see. Is that all in one paper somewhere that they could read that, and because I think people are interested in also substantiating this
Sure.
conversation.
And I wouldn't expect people to necessarily take my word for it, but dig into the information like I did.
so we
Look
can
at the
supply
literature.
them with some links.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I shared with you just before we started that back in the 80s, I had been 8 years in the domestic water filtration business.
Which I didn't know. One of the many things I don't know about you, even though I know a lot.
and it was interesting because I was young. I was in my
Younger.
20s and 30s, and I had just recently got sober, and I the truth is I was probably unemployable, but I called it self-employed.
Business opportunity.
And there's a fine line between self-employed and unemployed. But, so there I was. My brother was involved in the water filter business, and it was multi-level actually. It was like
MLM.
And I could get behind that. It was like I thought, yes, I can do that. But I read tons and tons of information around what was happening with chlorofluorocarbons with CFCs and organic matter and chlorine and in old piping and that kind of stuff.
Lead pipes.
Yeah, and lead joints and and I learned a lot. But fluoride was at the top of the deal then in our industry. It was like this is a terrible thing, and I went in depth into where it came from. At that time, we were told it was a byproduct from the aluminum industry, and that they literally needed a place to dump it.
Yep.
And how it came to be that it ended up in thousands of cities' water supplies, I'm not certain, but somebody did a lot of good work or bad work.
Look up Edward Bernays, Bernays. A lot of people say now if you look at propaganda, it's with a touch of Bernays sauce.
Oh.
Bernays, Edward Bernays. He's the propagandist of the 20th century. He wrote the book on propaganda.
Yes.
He's a nephew of Sigmund Freud.
Yes.
And he's the one that was hired by the tobacco companies in the 20s and 30s to convince women that smoking was good for them, particularly when they were pregnant, because it calmed them down. It was good for their fetus. So almost every woman in North America were smoking in the 30s, 40s.
Wow.
And then he was hired by the aluminum industry that you talked about to
Yeah.
whitewash the fluoride coming out of the aluminum stacks.
Wow.
And then hired by the fertilizer industry. And that's where we get most of our fluoride now. It's not pharmaceutical grade fluoride. It's hydrofluorosilicic acid that's scrubbed out of the fertilizer waste stacks in Florida and now mostly out of China, along with cadmium, lead, arsenic, mercury,
All the good stuff.
radionuclides. Yeah, all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Traces,
That's
and traces,
kidding.
not huge amounts or wouldn't be allowed, but traces bioaccumulate in the body. So your filters would have taken out some of those in the past, but usually not fluoride, because you usually need an expensive reverse osmosis system to take out fluoride.
We had a very small micron filter, on the top, and then we go through a whole carbon bed, and the carbon bed was impregnated with some with silver, ionic silver, and the silver would kill the bacteria. And then it would go through another micron bed, so it was like a 5-stage filter, and the manufacturer claimed that it would remove a good chunk of fluoride.
Yeah. So if you're getting 0.7 parts per million where they're at now, if you're moving 60 or 70, 80% of the fluoride, you're going to be okay. But a lot of them too, as the filters get a little bit older and wear down a bit, they don't remove as much neither. So you have to be careful of that.
It's just like us.
Yeah. Our bodies have learned to filter fluoride. We sequester about 50% of it in our bones, and then with our kidneys pee out the other 50%. So the stuff that's sequestered in the bones
Makes them brittle.
it makes bones thicker and more brittle, but it's not released to the rest of the body very much.
Oh, really?
So it's one of the body's way of protecting us against this nasty, aggressive little ion.
Yeah. So I thought, that we voted it out in Calgary.
We actually never voted it out. So we've had 6 referendums. They've actually disappeared one of them. So they say officially there's been 5 referendums since the 1950s. 3, I'm saying 4 have defeated it. And then those were the early ones. And they defeated it by very small margins.
Yeah.
Because there's always a lot of both sides, science on both sides,
Yeah.
a lot of opposition on both sides. And then the last 2 passed at 1989 and 1998, passed fluoridation by about 54 to 46%. So we've had those 6 referendums.
So we have fluoride in the water now?
No, so then after the first one in 1989 passed it, it took them 2 years to build the infrastructure and put it in. So 1991, we started fluoridating it, and we had it for 20 years. So after I discovered how bad the literature was and how harmful this chemical actually is to people, I contacted Dr. Jim Beck. Do you know Jim? From the University of Calgary. He was one of my mentors at the University of Calgary Medical School. Very learned guy. He's PhD and an MD, and biophysics and MD. And so I contacted him and said, Jim, would you mind having a look at this? He didn't know anything about water fluoridation, originally from the States, draft dodger. And he says, sure, be glad to. He was retired at that time. And so he looked at it, and a couple of weeks later he came back and said the same thing as I had said. It's just, this is awful. Why are we doing this, Bob? We're going to get rid of this. And I go, well, Jim, will you partner with me? And he goes, by all means, we should have this done in a few months. Well, it took us 12 years, and then along with people like Faye Ash and Colleen Cran and Elke Babiak and Jack Locke, working on the grassroots side. We work more on the academic and medical side, and working with city councilors. It took us 12 years, and we finally got the fluoride taps turned off in 2011, so 8 years ago.
And how come it's back on the table again?
Because the dentists and the doctors all think it's a good thing for the poor kids. You know, we just want to help the poor kids, right? I would love to help the poor kids. I've been helping the poor kids for 40 years with all my programs around the world. This is a danger to poor kids. It does not help the poor kids. So they say, well, but there's a 20%, a 40% reduction in cavities and caries, especially for the poor kids that don't have access to dentists. There might be that reduction. If you look at all the studies across the board, there might be that. Some studies show 0 reduction with fluoridation. But even if there is a 20 to 40% decrease in caries, what does that equate to in actual numbers?
What's a carie?
Carie or cavity.
Oh, cavity.
Carie is the actual dental or medical term for cavities. So 1/2 to 1 cavity a lifetime is 20 to 40%. So are you going to risk your kids' brains, your thyroid gland, your kidneys, your bones, your gut microbiome? Are you going to damage all those things? Possibly. Not everybody's going to be harmed by it, but a lot of people are. And then there's the people with the sensitivities and the allergies to it as well. All those problems for 1/2 to 1 cavity a lifetime? Does that make any sense to you?
Well, it doesn't to me, no.
No, and it doesn't to us neither.
I'm
So
ready to convert it.
yes, thank you. So we say we have the truth on our side, we have the science, and we have common sense. They have 1/2 to 1 cavity a lifetime, and they have the money and power. So here we are. They're trying to put it back in.
There's another point to this, other than this, that it's not good for us to be showering in fluoride. Well, there's all of drinking it for sure, but I think that a government that makes this big decision for the whole population, like to tell us, that without, I think there's no choice.
Exactly.
And for them to just say, okay, we're going to put fluoride in everybody's water.
Everybody's.
And it is. I think they're overstepping.
Absolutely, David.
Their mandate. Really, I think I think it's bullshit. And
unless you have a $8,000 or $10,000 whole house reverse osmosis system, then it's not in your water. But otherwise, it is. And if you went downtown right now and interviewed 100 people, 50 of them wouldn't even know what fluoride is.
Yes.
And out of the other 50, 25 or 26 would think it's good for you, and 24 would say no for a number of reasons.
Yeah. Do you guys have any comments on fluoride? Is there anybody that has any thoughts? I mean, most of us aren't drinking the tap water anyway. I mean, many people I know have filters, like I have this filtration system here. What's it called? Satina or something?
Sentiva.
Sentiva, yeah. But I don't know that it actually removes the fluoride or not.
Not much.
I don't want to drink the tap water anyway. And actually, we have probably some of the best tap water. I still won't drink it because we're close to the mountains and that kind of stuff. And our affluent, actually, we have a huge. Our system is one of the leading systems in the world for cleaning up our affluent.
Exactly.
In Calgary.
And if you look at that process, there's about 5 steps to that cleaning of the water process in our water plants. And so we do go through all those steps, very expensive, very time-consuming and tedious and meticulous. And then just before the water comes out to your tap, to your home, we inject hydrofluorosilicic acid straight from the fertilizer stacks, not monitored, not cleaned, not pharmaceutical grade, straight out of the stacks. We inject it in the water and it goes to your house. So we don't want to do that.
Now, you're talking about the water coming in. And I'm just saying that our city spent millions, and maybe hundreds of millions on cleaning the affluent, the water's going out. Did you know that? Like, we're leading in the world.
I mean, before it goes into the Bow River.
Yeah.
But they don't clean fluoride out of it.
Probably not.
No. So industry that is in Florida and China, Florida for sure, they're not allowed by strict law to put hydrofluorosilicic acid into the air, into the ground, into the rivers, lakes, streams, oceans. They can't put it anywhere except into a very expensive waste disposal plant, like say our Swan Hills plant up north.
Yes.
Very expensive for industry to do that. Costs them several $1,000s a ton. Or they could convince dentists and doctors that fluoride is good for kids' teeth, and they can put that out into the world, and they can sell it to us to dispose of in our city waters.
So I know that some of you are going to look at this and say, well, this sounds like conspiracy shit. But
it's not conspiracy. It's big business. It's a good business decision on their part.
It really is happening. This stuff that Bob's sharing right now, I knew, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And
it's still going, dude.
It's
That's
still
the amazing
happening.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that they're trying to put it back in.
Trying to put it back in.
So that's the deal. I think it's a great fight. What's the name of your site now? You have a Facebook page?
I founded Safe Water Calgary before the last civic election in 2017. Yeah. So Safe Water Calgary is our group, and we have a lot of science on there. So it's simply just www.safewatercalgary.com. And if you go on our homepage, which is again, safewatercalgary.com, right on the homepage, there's a Fluoride 101 video. It's just 12 minutes long. It's by a Portland dentist. Excellent video. It educates and it really debunks a lot of the modern day myths of fluoridation.
What are some of the possibilities of damage that could happen if we're actually drinking the 8 to 10 liters of water we're supposed to?
8 to 10 glasses.
Okay.
Not liters.
Not liters?
No, occasional person might drink that if you're out working in a hot day as a laborer or running a marathon.
So what would that be, about 4 liters?
2 liters.
2 liters, okay.
Yeah, 2 liters usually.
All right. So we're drinking 2 liters of water a day, and I'm 3 years old. I'm going to be drinking this water for the next 60, 70 years. What are some of the possibilities? Does it contribute to Alzheimer's?
There's all kinds of possibilities, and we haven't studied it that much because the medical and dental establishments have really done this safe and effective campaign very well, and so they've kept funding away. They've actually trashed the careers of some people that have tried to come out and say it's done some studies and say it's bad for this or that, and they've ruined careers. So a lot of people have been reticent to study, but now the studies are finally coming out more and more. So we can start with neurotoxicity, start with the brain. It calcifies the pineal gland, which is the seat of the soul, but IQ in kids, and there's really good studies out of Canada, and in combination with the NIH, the National Institute of Health in the States, and Mexico kids and mothers, that it drops IQ in fluoridated areas or in women that have fluoride in their urine, equivalent to what we have in Canada and the US, drops IQ between 4 to 7 points. Now, you might not even notice that in a kid. Your kid might be
how would you notice it?
Be a garbage collector instead of a teacher, but you wouldn't really notice that. But if you put that on a global scale, dropping 5 IQ points, if you look at the bell curve of IQ, it would shift the geniuses on the far right side of that spectrum about 50%. We'd lose 50% of our geniuses, which we really need to save our world right now, make our world a better place. And it would also increase by 50% the amount of mentally handicapped folks on the other end of the spectrum, which is huge for us as far as the dollars and the time, energy, and effort to care for those folks. So it bankrupt our system, basically. So if everybody in the world was fluoridated, now unfortunately, or fortunately, only 5% of the world's fluoridated. Okay. So in Calgary, they make it sound like we're these outliers, we're the mavericks or the rebels here, where everybody in the world is fluoridated and we should be too. Well, that's not the truth. What the truth is 95% of the world is not fluoridated. Right next door in British Columbia, 98% are not fluoridated.
So most cities in British Columbia do not have fluoride?
None of them, except there's 3 smaller ones, Terrace, Cranbrook, and I can't remember the other one. But anyway, 98.8% is not fluoridated in BC.
So major cities in Canada How many are in fluoride right now?
It's less than 40% now. I'd say around 38% of Canada is fluoridated. 71% of Ontario is. 98% of Quebec is not. And there's been studies done between Toronto and Montreal, and the teeth and kids' health in Montreal is as good or better than Toronto. It's been fluoridated since the 1960s.
Toronto has been.
Yeah, and Edmonton has been too.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, now we know what's going on with Edmonton. Now we figured out the whole deal.
See, you learn something every day.
There's a problem with the IQ up there.
Yeah. They're just getting whacked day after day.
Day after day, numbing them out.
The smart ones are using your filters and using the reverse osmosis.
Yeah, I'm just kidding, you guys. We love Edmonton.
I do too.
So, have you got some support? And people are helping out with this.
We do actually have a very large grassroots contingent now. We have a petition on our homepage at safewatercalgary.com that you can sign. There's at the last count it was like maybe 2,500 people have signed that. And
Let's sign that petition, you guys.
And we have some links to email your city councilors and the mayor too. The mayor is actually pro-fluoride, despite us having educated him or tried to educate him in the past and giving him the best book that's ever been written on fluoride called The Case Against Fluoride, written by my mentor, Dr. James Beck, and Dr. Paul Connett, who I just took to the airport at 5 o'clock this morning. He's from New York, PhD chemist. So him and Dr. Beck and Dr. Mecklem from England co-wrote this book in 2010. And it's the best book that's ever been written. There's like hundreds of
On
scientific
fluoride.
notations on fluoride.
So we can put the link on this.
Yep.
Yeah,
Can
awesome.
do.
Awesome.
The Case Against Fluoride.
Yeah.
The second best book I like to say, and this is a real fun book to read. Have you ever heard of The Fluoride Deception by Christopher Bryson?
Can't say that I have.
Probably not. If you get a chance, it's not that big a book. It's an easy read. And it's a fun read. It's a captivating read. It's almost like reading a spy novel. And so it's Christopher Bryson is an investigative reporter from England.
Yes.
And he spent 10 years researching fluoride.
Yep.
And he wrote all about the skullduggery, the buried science, the manipulation, the aluminum industry that you mentioned, the fertilizer industry, the military that needed it for producing the atom bomb. They needed a huge amount of fluoride. And about Edward Bernays, about his spin doctoring around it. Edward Bernays, by the way, after he finished with that campaign and fluoride was rolling all across America, he said that convincing doctors and dentists to that fluoride was good for kids was the easiest campaign he ever took on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so
So we're talking about harms. Sorry.
Yeah.
So if we just go down from the head, pineal gland, it calcifies the seat of the soul.
Yeah.
Drops IQ in kids between 4 to 7 points. It's very hard on thyroid. It's a thyroid enzyme toxin or inhibitor, and particularly in people that are low in iodine, which is about 18% of Canadians are low in iodine. So it's very hard on 18% of Canadians' thyroid.
supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's a good idea. It's very hard on kidneys. The Kidney Association of America quietly withdrew their support for fluoride or fluoridation a couple of years ago. The Liver Association has withdrawn their support as well. But some of the 90-plus organizations that still support, the professional organizations that still support water fluoridation are like the Chocolatiers Association and
Chocolatiers.
and the Confectionery Society of America. That's like Coca-Cola and such, the sugar industry. So yeah, there are 90 professional organizations that support fluoride, as Gord Gillies just said this morning on was it QR77 radio where I was interviewed this morning.
Were you?
He said he's a big supporter of fluoride, and he said, oh yeah, there's all these professional organizations that support it. Well, yeah, the Chocolatiers Society and the Confectionery Association, they support it too. So
Well, that's interesting. So I know that at community, I go to community
Natural, yeah.
natural food store, and they have some books in there on fluoride in their little library, or their they sell books on and
they also have our poster on there too.
do they?
On their bulletin board, at least they did.
Yes, nice. Are you doing some evenings where you're talking about this, or have you got some events coming up? Is there anything that we can direct people that really want to get more information?
We just had one yesterday at City Hall. We
Yeah.
had several people out. Actually, yesterday was supposed to be the big day for City Council.
Yeah.
They commissioned a report back in February of this year with the O'Brien Institute of Public Health from the University of Calgary
Yes.
to do a unbiased report on fluoridation.
Yeah.
And so We got to spice this talk up, David.
I know.
Get you going here.
I know. I didn't sleep much last night. Yeah.
So anyway, the O'Brien Institute's report was out a week ago, and yesterday afternoon was supposed to be the public hearing, the big public hearing, where anybody in Calgary could come and give 5-minute talk to City Council and tell them if they think fluoridation is a good or a bad thing. And unfortunately, with all this budget stuff going on in the city, Diane Carter-Urquhart, who's a big promoter of fluoride, has been the big push behind getting this back in. She made a motion on Monday morning, 3 days ago now, to postpone this big hearing that had been scheduled for many months. And people like Dr. Conant was flying in from New York. He still did fly in. We have people flying in from other parts of the States as well, and they all had to cancel their flights. And a lot of people that had taken time off from their holidays or from their work, they were out too. But anyways, we still gathered with over 40 activists in City Hall and had some good talks and a little bit of press there. And so
nice.
That was the one gathering we had recently. Now they're going to postpone it. Some talk was September 11th, but I think it's probably going to be October, maybe later in October, when the big public hearing is going to be.
All right.
So we don't have anything major planned at this point.
All right. Well, I think it's really cool that you care about this. You're taking the time to
I care about
this.
people's health, David. I always
Yes.
have. And as a doctor, too, one of the first things that I said as I walked into the medical school back in the 80s, first do no harm.
Yes.
We're harming the fetus, the infants, the babies, the children, the elderly, people with chronic diseases, people of color are more affected by the side effects of fluoridation. We're harming a lot of people, and we're harming at least 1% of the population that is either sensitive or have allergies to fluoride as well.
Allergies to fluoride.
This is about 15,000 people in Calgary right there if you take that 1%.
Really? That have allergies to fluoride?
Allergies or sensitivities to fluoride. And we hear very little about that.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. But we're saving that half a cavity a lifetime.
So he's a little cynical, and I get that.
Just a tad.
I understand.
Because fluoride is not needed for a single body function.
Yes.
Will that wake you up? Not needed for a single thing, David.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I know. So you guys, common sense would tell you that, fluoride's not a good idea to have in your water.
Highly toxic.
Highly toxic. So there's going to come a time when we may have to vote on this. And remember that you heard it here. I totally, absolutely agree with what Bob's saying. And not only do I love Bob and all the work that he's done all these years, but I'm personally aware, because of my own study around this subject years ago, and I read quite a bit of literature.
You knew this 30 years ago.
I did, yeah.
And it's still in. And they're still saying safe and effective, rubber stamp, delete all the anti-fluoride. There's thousands of anti-fluoride studies. Delete, delete, delete. Oh, there's no anti-fluoride studies. We've deleted them all.
Yeah. So there you go. That if you have kids, whatever, I think that we're all kind of responsible to look after our society. And I think it's a good idea not to have fluoride.
And just a couple other things on that note. Now with the city cutting the budgets of police and fire and transit and the poor in some areas, can we spend $6 million to replace the fluoridation infrastructure, plus $1 million a year to buy the product out of the fertilizer industry stacks? I don't think so. Economically, it doesn't make sense.
Let's not do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think let's build a new library or something. Yeah.
Or something. Or let's build a Child Smile program like they have in Scotland. Scotland has zero water fluoridation. Zero.
Yeah.
And
sorry, guys.
And they have a Child Smile program
Yeah.
that takes kids from the time they're 2 or 3 years old and teaches them about oral health and about proper brushing, and they monitor the brushing, and they teach them about diet and all those sorts of things, and sugary
Scotland.
drinks in Scotland, and they have the best kids' teeth on the planet.
So I've heard you only need to floss the teeth you want to keep.
There you go. Good adage.
Have you ever heard that?
Not, but sounds good to me.
only floss the teeth you want to keep. And now people are really believe in the idea of fluoride. They can go get a treatment, can't they?
Absolutely. It's available in 69-cent a tube toothpaste, for one thing. That's what, fluoride does the good topically, right there. You don't swallow your sunscreen. You don't swallow your mouthwash.
I see.
Your Botox, you don't swallow that.
I'm not on Botox.
It just looks so good. I thought maybe you were.
Yeah, right. It's ozone oil.
Right, there you go, ozone oil. Yeah. You don't swallow your ozone oil, I hope.
Sometimes.
Oh, boy, okay.
Yeah,
Anyway, you shouldn't swallow your fluoride.
No.
Yeah, you put it topically if you want it.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to get that: sealants and gels and foams and rinses. And
Yeah.
at the
Remember
dentist,
they used to do those things. They put it on like
the tray.
the tray.
Yeah.
Do they still do that? You think?
Some dentists still do, but there's a lot of dentists. I mean, one thing I hear, like on Facebook and such, every dentist in Calgary is in favor of water fluoridation. That is so far from the truth. There's dentists in Calgary, many of them, that won't even allow fluoride to cross their threshold into their office, so they don't even use it topically.
Okay.
And they're certainly not in favor of water fluoridation. But they have a hard time speaking out because the Alberta Dental Association will sanction them. And they've threatened dentists to take their license away. So if you're going to lose your $1 million a year license,
Yeah, I guess.
speak out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, thank you for coming in, but thank you for what you're doing for community and
Thank you for having me.
making a
It's been
difference.
a pleasure to catch up with you too.
Got any trips coming up? You going away anywhere you're going to go work this year?
I've been so inundated with this fluoridation thing, I haven't had a chance to think about it. We're talking thousands of hours here in the last year
Is that right?
or two. Yeah, it's been really amazing. Even when I was on holidays this last winter in Australia and India, I was putting in several hours a day on anti-fluoridation.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you're, a driving force. I think, is going to make a big difference.
Well, that's one reason why they postponed the meeting from yesterday till probably October, is that we have momentum, and they would have lost the vote if there was a vote. I think they would have lost it.
Oh, were they just? The other day wouldn't have been a vote. It was going to be a.
Well, it's a public hearing,
Yeah.
and then it was for the Standing Policy Committee on Community and Protective Services, who are receiving the report from the O'Brien Institute of Public Health, and so that committee would either decide to, no, we're fine the way we are with no fluoridation,
Yeah.
and just let it go, or they would take it back to City Council with some sort of motion and saying, well, we think we should refluoridate, we should start this program again. But City Council would have to vote on it, so that would be weeks or whatever later,
Yeah.
or months. So they couldn't restart fluoridation as of yesterday if we would have had the meeting. But we would have had a lot of councillors on our side yesterday.
Okay.
And so they're wanting to regroup and, maybe
Nice.
come back with something in a few months.
Well, you're making a difference there. Thank you so much.
My
Hey
pleasure.
guys, we're comments. If you have any questions, you post them anytime in the next little while. Bob will be able to come in on, not come in, but go on the link and answer them. Right?
Be happy to.
And love it if you share this. With the groups that you have, and also check us out on YouTube. We've got a channel on YouTube. We'd love it if you subscribe to us on YouTube, and we're also going to show this on IGTV. And so love you guys, and this is not something I normally do, but I really believe that this is part of our awakening, is to recognize that we have responsibility. And yeah, fluoride, not in my water, he said, baby, not in my water. Okay.
And there's our links. Get on our website, safewatercalgary.com.
We'll put it all on there. Love you guys so much. Talk to you soon. Cheers.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.